The spaceship hangar buzzed with quiet, purposeful activity like a backstage before a play if the play involved interstellar diplomacy and the backstage had a gravity adjustment field. Xavier Jensen adjusted the collar of his gray standard-issue Earth Union uniform and squinted at the approaching alien delegation. He resisted the urge to scratch the scar on his left forearm. Old habit. The one from the bike crash in 3rd grade. They were late, but he'd expected that. The Vellin never arrived on time. Something about the concept of punctuality being too linear. Xavier didn't pretend to get it, but he'd read the cultural briefings. You had to respect their customs if you wanted them to respect yours. The Vellin ambassador, a tall, silvery creature with translucent skin and an unsettling number of eyes, glided forward. It wore a shimmering cloak that shifted colors as it moved. Xavier had seen it before, but it still made his eyes ache. "I am Ambassador Tilan of the Vellin Accord," it said in a voice like wind through wet reeds. "You are the warrior Xavier Jensen." Xavier blinked. "No, I'm the liaison officer for this sector. Just..." "Xavier is fine." Tilan tilted its head. "Your body bears the marks of conflict. Your arm, your leg, the left side of your jaw. These are war wounds." Xavier followed Tilan's gaze to the faint white line on his forearm. "That one's from a gravel driveway and a BMX bike. I was 9. Tilan's lower eyes narrowed. "You were trained in combat at 9? "No. I was trying to jump a ramp my cousin built out of plywood and cinder blocks. Collapsed. I ate it hard." Tilan made a soft, vibrating sound Xavier had learned was their equivalent of a gasp. "You were dismembered as a child and survived?" "What?" "No, it was a scrape. Just needed stitches." Tilan stepped closer, inspecting him with a seriousness that bordered on reverence. "Your people allow children in war zones?" Xavier sighed. "No, we just get hurt doing stupid things. It's part of growing up." Before Tilan could ask more, a technician jogged over with a datapad. "Liaison Jensen, we've got a situation in Dock 7. One of the Vellin shuttles clipped the hull on entry. Minor damage, but they're requesting a human mechanic." Tilan turned. "Why human?" The technician hesitated. "They say human engineers are inventive." Xavier nodded. "We'll send someone. Tell them to hold position till we get a crew out there." As the tech hurried off, Tilan turned back to him. "You were scarred in many places. Your jawline. Baseball. Took a line drive to the face. 16 stitches. Baseball is war? It's a sport." Tilan's eyes moved rapidly like it was recalculating half its worldview. "You engage in ritualized combat for pleasure?" "Not combat. Just competition." Tilan stared at him for a long moment. "Your resilience is extreme." Xavier rubbed the back of his neck. "We're just used to getting banged up, I guess." Over the next few days, as the diplomatic summit began, Xavier found himself shadowed by Tilan more often than protocol required. The ambassador asked about every visible scar: his knuckle from punching a vending machine in college, the line on his shin from tripping over a sprinkler head, the thin line on his scalp where he fell off a rope swing and hit a rock. Each time, Tilan's awe grew. On the 4th day, Xavier was asked to accompany the Vellin delegation to a surface outpost for a joint inspection. The shuttle ride was smooth, but the terrain on the planet was another matter. The outpost sat amid jagged cliffs and loose shale. The Vellin glided over the terrain easily. Xavier, on the other hand, slipped on a slick patch and went down hard. He caught himself on his right arm, but his ankle twisted under him. "Ah, damn it," he hissed, sitting up and cradling his leg. Tilan floated over. "You have been struck in battle again." "It's not battle, I tripped." "You were injured. We must call for extraction." "No, I can." Xavier tried to stand, but the pain shot through his ankle like fire. He sat back down with a grunt. "All right. Yeah. We should call someone." Back at the medical bay, the scan confirmed a fracture in the fibula. Nothing displaced, but it would need a boot and crutches. 6 weeks of healing, give or take. Tilan hovered nearby, watching the medical team wrap Xavier's leg. "You endure much suffering for peace." "I endure gravity and bad shoes," Xavier muttered. Still, the injury slowed him down. He limped through meetings, the boot thudding against the metallic floors. Tilan never left his side. At one point during a joint session, the ambassador addressed the gathered species with a speech that stunned even the translators. Humans are forged in chaos, Tilan said. Their young are blooded before maturity. They suffer injuries with routine acceptance. Their scars are not emblems of war but of life. This is a species that adapts to pain as others adapt to air. Xavier cleared his throat. That might be overstating it. Tilan turned to him. Then explain the line across your abdomen. Xavier grimaced. Appendectomy. Burst appendix when I was 15. Tilan looked baffled. You removed an organ to survive? Yeah. Kind of routine surgery. Routine dismemberment. It's not. Never mind. Later that week, as Xavier sat in the mess hall with a tray of bland protein cubes, Tilan approached with a small object in hand. I have made a gesture of honor, it said. Xavier took the object. It was a thin band, flexible and metallic, with a design etched into it resembling a jagged line. What is this? A scar band. We Vellin mark great battles with such symbols. I didn't fight a battle. You have. You survived a fall, a projectile to the face, organ failure, and a shuttle inspection mission. Xavier chuckled. And a broken ankle. Tilan tilted its head. Then you have earned your second band. The summit ended without conflict, which was a win in Xavier's book. As the delegations departed, Tilan paused before stepping onto its ship. Your species is not what we expected. Same goes for yours. You endure injury as casually as we change skin. Still hurts, you know? We just push through. Tilan nodded. Perhaps we have misunderstood strength. Xavier waved. Take care, Tilan. Weeks later, after the boot came off and physical therapy was underway, Xavier got a package in the mailroom. Inside was a strip of Vellin silk, dyed the color of healing wounds a soft pinkish hue. A note accompanied it. To the warrior who scars but does not yield. Xavier laughed, careful not to twist his still tender ankle, and pinned it to his bunk wall. He wasn't a warrior. He was a man who fell off bikes, got hit with baseballs, and tripped on rocks. But somehow that was enough to impress a species that could hover over lava. Maybe survival wasn't about armor or weapons. Maybe it was about getting up again and again with bruises and scrapes and stories that made no sense to anyone but your own kind. And sometimes not even them. The Vellin didn't knock. Not because they were rude, although Xavier had his doubts, but because their physiology didn't allow for it. Their upper limbs were more like prehensile fans, good for manipulating tools and adjusting environment controls, but incapable of delivering a satisfying knock on a doorframe. So when the translucent panel to Xavier's temporary quarters hissed open without warning, he was already halfway out of his bunk, foot catching on the edge of a folded uniform. Tilan glided into the room, trailed by two shorter Vellin aides. Their skin shimmered in muted shades of blue and green, a less vivid hue than Tilan's ever-shifting silver. You are not in your therapeutic brace, Tilan observed. I've been out of it for 2 days, Xavier said, steadying himself against the desk. Doc cleared me for walking without the boot. Just no sprinting or... He glanced at the aide's cliff diving. Tilan's eyes, at least the top set, tightened slightly. You jest, but your people do leap from elevated terrain for leisure. That's called base jumping. Not my thing. We have reviewed footage. Tilan gestured to one of the aides who extended a data sphere. The surface flickered to life, projecting a silent clip of a human plummeting from a skyscraper with a parachute barely deployed. The Vellin aide looked visibly unwell. Can we not do this before breakfast? Xavier muttered. It is midday, Tilan said. Which is exactly why I haven't had breakfast yet. Tilan didn't acknowledge the comment. Instead, it floated farther into the room and settled near the reading alcove, its aides fanning out like ceremonial guards. The movement was too formal, too deliberate. Xavier narrowed his eyes. You're not here to talk about my leg. No, Tilan said. We wish to understand your tolerance for discomfort. Pain tolerance? Discomfort. More broadly, your species continues to operate when food-deprived, sleep-deprived, and Tilan gestured at the room's temperature gauge, in climates that would debilitate most sentience. Xavier grabbed a protein bar off the shelf and tore it open. We complain about it. Doesn't mean we enjoy it. But you persist. Yeah, we kind of have to. There is no compulsion. You elect to endure. Xavier chewed and shrugged. What's this really about? Tilan exchanged a glance, if it could be called that, with its aides. The taller of the two stepped forward. We are preparing for the joint expedition, it said. Its translator voice was softer, newer. A subterranean survey. We require a human on the team. Xavier swallowed. I'm not certified for geology. We seek not expertise, the aide replied. We seek resilience. Xavier stared at the three of them. You're serious. Your capacity to continue functioning under adverse circumstances makes you an ideal candidate. The caverns are unstable. Visibility will be limited. Atmospheric composition is unpredictable. And your own people can't handle that? They are effective under known variables, Tilan said. Your species is effective when variables become unknowable. Xavier rubbed his temple. So let me get this straight. You want me to crawl into a dark, collapsing pit because I once made it to third period with a broken wrist and no breakfast? Tilan's lower eyes blinked. Yes, he sighed. When? Preparations will conclude tomorrow. You will be accompanied by 3 Vellin, 2 zooengineers, and a saurid biologist. Great. A whole space party. Tilan's aides turned and exited without another word. Tilan lingered. You may refuse, it said. Xavier looked at his half-eaten protein bar. I'll go. Tilan inclined slightly. We will ensure your medical file is updated. I feel reassured already. The next morning, the team gathered in Base 6 where the transport module sat prepped and humming. The Vellin wore sealed suits with built-in stabilizers. The tall insectoid creatures with jointed limbs and no discernible eyes, moved with a twitchy elegance. The saurid, a broad-shouldered reptilian with a voice like grinding gravel, barely acknowledged Xavier's presence. He was issued a compression suit, a helmet with a filtered rebreather, and a wearable monitor patch for vitals. The medical officer double-checked his ankle, wrapped it with a tension sleeve, and handed him a small injection pen. For inflammation, she said. Only if it gets bad. Define bad. If you start seeing spots or throwing up. Comforting. The descent was smooth for the first hour. The transport module burrowed through layers of volcanic rock using a magnetic tunneling drill, which vibrated just enough to make Xavier's teeth itch. They emerged into a wide chamber lit by the module's external lamp's jagged walls, uneven floor, and a faint, metallic smell that clung to the back of his throat. Atmosphere stable, one of the Zo clicked. No sulfur spikes. Proceeding. They spread out, collecting samples and scanning mineral compositions. Xavier mostly stood by, careful where he stepped. The ground felt brittle underfoot, like dried coral. His ankle twinged once, but he ignored it. An hour in, the tremor hit. It wasn't violent, more like a long, heavy exhale from deep beneath the surface. But it was enough to send a chunk of ceiling tumbling down one side of the cavern. The saurid shouted something in its native tongue and ducked under an overhang. One of the Vellin aides lost balance and toppled sideways, its stabilizers flaring too late. Xavier dashed forward, caught the aide by an upper limb, and hauled it upright before a second tremor hit. This one sharper, closer. Fall back, the zooengineer chirped. Structural compromise. The path back to the transport module had narrowed. A slab of stone had wedged itself into the corridor. The saurid tried pushing it aside, but it didn't budge. Xavier knelt, ran his fingers along the edge. It's jammed into a natural groove. We need leverage. The Zo handed him a tool that looked somewhere between a tire iron and a tuning fork. Xavier wedged it into the crack, braced his foot against the wall, and pulled. Nothing. He glanced at the saurid. You got any muscle to lend? They worked in tandem, the saurid pushing while Xavier pulled. The edge shifted with a grinding groan, then popped loose. The slab tipped forward, cracking in half as it hit the floor. As they made their way back to the module, Xavier noticed one of the Vellin limping. "You all right?" "I sustained tissue compression," it said. "Mobility is reduced. Can you make it?" "With delay." Xavier moved beside it and offered an arm. "Come on. We'll take it slow." The Vellin hesitated, then leaned into the support. Its limbs were cool and slightly damp like sea-washed stone. They reached the transport module just as the floor behind them gave way into a sinkhole. Back aboard the surface station, everyone was scanned for contaminants and injuries. Xavier's ankle was swollen again, but not fractured. The medic handed him a cold pack and a look of exasperation. "Maybe try not playing hero next time." "Wasn't trying," Xavier said. "Just didn't want to leave anyone behind." Later that evening, as he sat in the observation dome with a cup of lukewarm tea, Tilan approached silently. "We have reviewed the footage." "Let me guess," Xavier said. "I'm reckless. You are resourceful. Your behavior under stress suggests a high threshold for improvisation. I was just trying not to get crushed. That is precisely the trait we wish to understand." Xavier leaned back, staring out at the stars. "You want to know what really keeps us going?" he said. "We assume things will get worse. So we figure we might as well handle what's in front of us now." Tilan watched him for a long moment. "We calculate risk. You anticipate failure." "Optimism's expensive," Xavier said. "Failure's cheap. We train on it." Tilan held out a small container. Inside was a strip of woven fiber, dark gray with a single red line through the middle. "A recognition," it said, "for voluntary exposure to instability." Xavier chuckled. "You guys sure love your ribbons." Tilan didn't respond. Instead, it placed the container beside him and turned to leave. As its shimmering form disappeared down the corridor, Xavier reached for the ribbon and turned it over in his hand. The material was tougher than it looked. Worn, but unfrayed, kind of like him. The Vellin hydrochamber wasn't designed for humans, but Xavier sat near the edge anyway. Boots off, legs dangling into the cool, mineral-heavy water. It smelled faintly of iron and something floral, like crushed aloe. The humidity clung to his skin, but it eased the stiffness in his joints. He'd been invited, or rather escorted, by Tilan, who now hovered silently across from him, half submerged in the pool. "Your circulation system fascinates our medics," Tilan said without preamble. "They are perplexed by its ability to reroute blood flow during trauma." Xavier leaned back on his hands. "That's not something I think about often. It is reactive, decentralized, like your responses to crisis," Tilan continued. "No single source of command, yet the system functions." "We're not big on top-down control," Xavier said, "except for taxes." Tilan's skin shifted briefly to a pale green, which Xavier had come to recognize as amusement. "Your cardiovascular limitations are offset by chemical improvisation. Your species produces pain inhibitors internally." "Endorphins," Xavier said, nodding. "Body's way of numbing the hit long enough to get out of danger." Tilan observed him for a moment. "You do not appear to fear injury." Xavier dipped his feet further into the water. "I don't enjoy it, but I've had enough of it to know what's serious and what's just annoying." "This calibration, does it come from formal training?" "No. It comes from experience. You fall off enough things as a kid, you figure out what needs a hospital and what just needs duct tape." Tilan studied him, then rose slightly from the water. "Come. There is someone who wishes to speak with you." They moved through a corridor lined with soft blue bioluminescent panels, the Vellin equivalent of hallway lighting. The air was warmer here, tinged with ozone. They stopped before a chamber with walls that pulsed gently, like a sleeping lung. Inside, another Vellin rested on a low platform, limbs wrapped in translucent sheaths. Its outer membrane bore a faint tear near the base of its midsection. "This is Lyran," Tilan said. "You supported them during the collapse." Lyran inclined its head slightly. Your limb was compromised, yet you bore weight on it to stabilize me. It was manageable, Xavier said. You were worse off. I did not expect support from a non-kin species. I didn't expect to be underground with creatures who don't have knees. We both had surprises. Lyran's upper limbs twitched. I have reviewed the footage. Your posture suggested controlled pain. Why conceal it? I wasn't hiding it. I just didn't want it slowing us down. Lyran's eyes narrowed. That is not instinctive. It is chosen. Xavier crossed his arms. Pain's not always a stop sign. Sometimes it's just a warning light. Tilan approached the wall and touched a panel. A display flickered to life, showing internal scans of human musculature. Your species heals through regrowth, not reformation. Scar tissue replaces the original structure. Yeah, Xavier said. It's not pretty, but it works. Tilan turned to him. You bear the memory of wounds in your very skin. So do you, Xavier said, nodding toward Lyran. Just less visibly. Lyran gestured toward a small device on the table. This is a sensory translator. It maps physical sensations for comparative analysis. Would you consent to a brief demonstration? Xavier hesitated. What kind of demonstration? It will simulate the pain level you experienced during the collapse. I wish to understand it. Xavier raised an eyebrow. You want to feel a human-grade ankle sprain? Yes. He took the device, strapped it to his forearm, and adjusted the dial. All right. This is what it felt like walking on it. Lyran activated the link. For a moment, it remained still. Then its limbs spasmed slightly and it made a low, warbling noise. Tilan stepped forward. Lyran, disengage. But Lyran held up a limb. It is tolerable. Sharp, but localized. There is no panic in it. No, Xavier said. Panic comes when you can't move. This was just pain. Lyran deactivated the translator. I understand now why you kept walking. Xavier handed back the device. Understanding it's one thing. Living it's another. Tilan's skin darkened to a stormy gray. We have long misjudged your kind. We believed your strength came from aggression. But it is endurance. We're not built to win every fight, Xavier said. We're built to make it through the ones we lose. Lyran reached into a compartment beside the platform and retrieved a small container. Inside was a band of woven fibers darker than the last, with a thin thread of copper running through it. We offer this, Lyran said. It marks mutual preservation. Xavier accepted it quietly. Later that week, he returned to the human quarters for a full debrief. The mission report was thorough: no fatalities, minor injuries, successful retrieval of geological samples. But the debrief coordinator, a stocky woman named Harris, flagged one section for clarification. You applied orthopedic support to a Vellin using pressure tape and a metal probe? They don't have bones, Xavier said. But they've got internal chambers that collapse under strain. I just reinforced one. You're not licensed for xenomedical care. I was licensed for not letting someone bleed out in a tunnel. She made a note on her pad. The report also says you donated hemoglobin samples for research. They asked. I had time. You didn't clear that through biosecurity. It's blood. Not a missile. She sighed. You're going to need to sit through another ethics seminar. Can I bring my ankle brace? She didn't answer. The next day, while packing his things for transfer back to the orbital station, Xavier found another package waiting for him. It was small, with no return label, wrapped in a synthetic fiber that shimmered slightly in the light. Inside was a fragment of rock, smooth on one side, jagged on the other. Attached was a short note, handwritten in English, though clearly by someone unfamiliar with the language. Your fall was our rise. Thank you. Lyran. Xavier placed the fragment on his shelf beside the scar bands. The rock was unremarkable, not unlike something you'd kick aside on a hiking trail. But it had been part of the cave, part of the moment, part of the choice. He sat on the edge of the bunk and stretched his leg. The ankle still ached a little, but it was healing. The tissue would never be as strong as it had been, but it would hold. He thought about the look on Lyran's face when it felt human pain for the first time. Not fear, Not revulsion, just comprehension. That was something. As the transport arrived to take him off station, Xavier passed by Tilan one last time in the corridor. The ambassador was flanked by two new aides, both younger, both watching him closely. "We will miss your unpredictability," Tilan said. "I doubt your corridors will miss my limp. You misunderstand. We have adjusted the gravity calibrations to match your stride." Xavier paused. "Seriously?" Tilan's skin shimmered. "We adapt." He nodded, stepping onto the transport platform. "Tell Lyran thanks for the rock. We already have." They are compiling a lexicon of human injury metaphors. Xavier chuckled. "That'll be a long book." The platform rose and the station receded behind him. Above, the stars didn't look any different. But somewhere in the vast quiet between them, a species that once saw scars as proof of violence now saw them as something else. Proof of persistence. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough.